Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Joe Samaniego here, and with me we have Edward Hunter from Formula E Zone, Isha Azim from Racing with Isha, Jackson Todd from 36xracing.com, and Joshua Birch from Joshua Birch Motorsports. Link to all their outlets in the video description. And we are now less than 30 subscribers away from 1,000. You want some Grid Network stickers? Invest in the Grid Network. Colin, the show, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew, they all invest in us each and every month. You too can invest in us through Patreon or buy me a coffee or super chat. If we see the super chat while we're on the air, we'll thank you on the air. And of course, you can buy a cup of coffee or a super chat for a member of the on-air team, and they'll thank you, and we'll forward them the funds. And of course, be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell icon. Easiest way to support us, help us get to 1,000 subscribers. And we're very excited to share that we're going to be at the Thermal Club for the IndyCar All-Star Challenge. So be sure to keep investing in us so we could go to more tracks throughout 2024. Isha, we got to start with Sao Paulo. This track, very unique street course. This is going to be a lot of fun for Formula E, and it's been a while since we've seen Formula E on the track.
That's right, Joe. The ABB Formula E World Championship is in Sao Paulo, Brazil this weekend for one race. The weekend started with both Jaguars fastest in the first practice session on Friday. Nick Cassidy did not make it into the qualifying duels, and Evans was eliminated in round one. Now, Sam Bird in the McLaren was the fastest in the second practice over Stoffel Van Dorn. But in the qualifying duel, he was eliminated by Max Gunther. Van Dorn made it to the final against Pascal Wehrlein for the pole. By 0.02 of a second, they came up short of a pole, ending Pascal on pole. Now, Ed and Josh, Pascal is second in the points. Can he cruise to victory, or will he have a hard fight and energy management to focus on?
Well, I think there's no such thing. You might have been forgiven because the last Formula E race I watched was Mexico, where Pascal did indeed cruise to victory, of course. But since then, there apparently been two more in Saudi Arabia, and there's all these PIF Saudi Air logos glittered on the side of the track, which is a somewhat depressing sight for anyone who's a fan of human rights. But anyway, in terms of Pascal Wehrlein in the race, I think we're going to see Peloton style racing like we saw last year at Sao Paulo, most notably, but also in Berlin and Portland as well, where nobody really wants to lead for most of the race because you just overconsume so much energy and you can save so much more by staying tight in the draft behind another car, essentially. So Wehrlein might indeed drop behind Stoffel Van Dorn or John Eric Vergne, one of the DS Penske's right behind him, and try and just draft and get save some energy in the early part of the race. The drivers and teams that were very, very good in this style of racing was Jaguar, understandably, with Nick Cassidy and Mitch Evans. All four of the Peloton style races we won last year, two of them were won by Mitch Evans, two of them were won by Nick Cassidy. So I think those are the ones that Pascal Wehrlein's really got to worry about. It's going to test the efficiency of that of the Porsche powertrain, whether the software improvements have made a difference or not. On the basis of Saudi Arabia, you've got to think that the Jaguars are, despite not qualifying in the top three, essentially, are got to be the favourites to win this one. Even though Nick Cassidy, of course, as you say, not making the duels. So yeah, Pascal Wehrlein, he'll certainly have a good view into the first corner, but from then on, it gets way, way more complicated. And I'm sure Josh, who actually watched the qualifying session live, unlike me, has more insight to give you.
Yeah, well, the drivers are seriously getting ready. They were voicing their concerns on media day, saying that it's going to be littered with accidents, littered with red flags, and they're expecting to have a very stop-start day. It's still 31 laps, the same distance as it was last year, but the usable energy has been reduced from 40 kilowatts to 38.1, and that's going to deliver us the Peloton-style racing that Ed was talking about and what we saw last season, most notably in Portland, where nobody wanted to lead the race out front. And because of that is the reason, if you're out front, you're in clean air, which means that you're actually using more battery to stay in front. Whereas if you're in the mid-pack, you're braking earlier as a reaction to everybody else, you're saving more energy, and you're not under attack. So those who start on the front three rows of the grid are actually going to not want to be there. So the driver said that they're all going to be lifting off in towards turn 1 in order to make sure that they actually save the energy. So we're expecting around about 5 to 6 laps of peloton style racing. Then if there's a safety car early on or any red flags the drivers are predicting, it'll again save the energy. But you've also got to remember, it's, as there's a giant wasp in my room. Oh no, it's a ladybird. It's a ladybird. Oh, never mind. I thought it was a wasp. But anyway, as the driver's saying, that's 38.1% of usable energy. That's already with the same race distance as last year, but they've got to then save an extra 7 laps of energy in case we have any overtime that gets added in the safety cars. So it's a very complicated race, and I'm expecting a lot of drama. I've got 3 water bottles in front of me ready to go, and that's only supposed to be, 45-hour race max? We're going to be here a long time. So in terms of Pascal starting on pole position, he's actually in the worst place. He didn't want to start on pole position. He's got those 3 points. He needs them in the championship because now he's moved up to 41. Whereas Cassidy, who's on 57, he starts back in 9th position on the grid. So I'd argue Cassidy's actually in a much better position in the Jaguar than Verline is. So no, it's not going to be a runaway. It's going to have to be a very much a strategy race. And Verline's very much in trouble for it.
That's certainly interesting. Now let us take a look at 2 other drivers. So Jake Dennis did not enter the dual stage and was the 6th fastest in Group B. His teammate Norman Nato was slowest in Group A, both behind the Porsche team in qualifying. So Josh, is Andretti Global in for a long race? And can Jake Dennis work his way up into the top 10?
Nato was close coming in practice as well. It was sort of like he almost had the pace and then he just backed off massively. And in one of his in qualifying, he was fast in the second sector and then backed off massively, decided to come into the pit lane. I would have personally continued because that lap time would have been quick enough to get him in to the duels. So he's down on it. Jake Dennis surprised me actually with how poor he's been this weekend. I know it sounds awful to say that, but he has not looked on form in the 2 practice sessions nor in qualifying. Whether he's sacrificed more of that to get in race data, we'll find out in around about 45 minutes' time. So I think Andretti this weekend are sort of going to be just going for what they can salvage in terms of points and another difficult start to the year for them. And it's definitely seeming that those who have a Porsche or a Jaguar powertrain are going to be right up the front of the field. They're better with energy management anyway.
Which is interesting because the Andretti, of course, does have a Porsche powertrain. So it doesn't seem like they blew qualifying just so they had a lot of cars to draft at the start of the race. I don't think any team consciously blows qualifying because if you qualify that far back, sort of both cars essentially, I think just outside the top 20, essentially. So they're a huge risk of getting into an accident if something happens on the first lap, and it tends to at Sao Paulo because it bunches up. Look at the footage of last year of Norman Nato going flying over the back of, I think it was one of the McLaren's rear tires. He just collected it at the start, and then that sent him into the air and into the wall and out the race essentially at the very start of the race. And he qualified well last year as well. But yeah, I think they can make their way through. It's just a matter of staying out of trouble. That's going to be the biggest issue for them because we even saw it happen to Jake Dennis last year, where him and Dan Ticktum basically braked way too late into turn 1, bumped into Jake Dennis, and basically took him out of the race, and he had a huge setback in the championship essentially as a result of that. So Jake Dennis needs to make sure history doesn't repeat itself, and Norman Nato can certainly help him car through the pack, which is exactly what they did in Mexico City at the start of the season when they also didn't qualify well. Both cars got sneaked into the top 10 and they came away feeling that was a decent recovery job. So I imagine it's a very similar scenario today.
Yep, definitely. Now, before we continue, I believe there's a comment in the chat room. So Adam says, doesn't bother me regarding pack racing. Should be interesting in Sao Paulo. Yes, it's definitely going to be quite an interesting race. Now, to make it more interesting, here's a surprise for some people. Mahindra saw Eduardo Mortara make it to the dual stage. Mortara is starting in the top 10 and Nick DeVries is in 14th. This team has been in the back of the grid, but now finds itself mid-pack, and it's been a while since the team saw success on track. So Ed and Josh, is Mahindra making noticeable progress, or is their car just better suited for this track?
Well, the team's had a rocky few seasons because they've had Frederick Bertrand, who joined as team principal beginning of last season, and he's, I think, in the middle of what he described as a 3-year plan. So we saw them get very, very close to points a couple of times this season, but none so far on the board, as you can see just here. So it is good to see Ida. I think it was more a case of Eduardo Mortara getting the setup right and nailing a lap together. I don't think we also did see Nico Muller, I think, also just sneak into the top 10 as well in the similarly power-trained apt Cupra car. So it certainly feels like they're slightly stronger at this circuit, but whether they've got the efficiency, that's going to be the Achilles heel, essentially, because if they're burning through their energy early in the race, then they're going to end up with being essentially passed in the second half of the race, essentially, and being shuffled back down the pack. Strategy with attack mode as well will also play its part. So whether they can manage that effectively, we'll have to see. But it's certainly an encouraging sign for Mahindra. But I think one swallow doesn't really make a summer. And Nick De Vries in 14th is sort of about where we expected Mahindra to be honest. So I think good luck from Ido. Let's see what you can do in the race. But I'm not going to hold my breath and expect Mahindra to score top 5, top 6 and come away with a load of points here.
No, I agree with you there, Ed. And there's another factor as well, is that it was a great qualifying performance from Edo as well. As you say, he's always been really good at these qualifying bonanza lap times. But the biggest one was he still had reliability, because at the end of practice 2, he stopped out on the track. And we haven't got Scott Elkin this weekend as race director. It's his understudy that's here this weekend. And let me tell you something, a bit worried about how long it takes him to notice there's a problem on the track. Yellow flag for 6 minutes before, when the car stopped on the track, before a red flag came out. He sort of made
say
up
that, Josh, but Scott himself was a bit slow, wasn't he? And you complained about him multiple times.
But, yeah, but at 6 minutes with a car stationary in a dying practice session, you have to throw a red flag early. But credit where credit's due, because the red flag came out within 15 seconds of the qualifying session, when all of a sudden a parachute literally fell on, looked like a hamster was attached to it. Well, not really, but but it's literally a giant parachute, little tiny box, just sort of fell onto the track. It was one of the weirdest things I've seen. Looked like one of those hamster things. Remember the Simpsons episode where he bails out when they try and launch a rocket into space? Anyway, getting sidetracked. Yeah, Mortara stopped on the track in practice 2, and that reliability issue's still there. So I think Mahindra, it's not a 3-year plan, is it? It's a survival plan, because it's going to be like they're going to be pulled out of this series quite quickly.
Well, they're stuck with the hardware from last year, aren't they? Because their partner, they split from ZF.
And last year was bad as well. It's been bad for a couple of years now, and they can't fix it. And it's like, are they waiting for Gen 4 that comes in a couple of seasons' time? Are they waiting for Gen 0.5, which is coming in a season and a half? So it's like, what do they do here? It's a long wait to go like, yeah, this isn't working. So I miss Mahindra, but they shot themselves in the foot by deciding to change everything up, and they're reaping their own rewards, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Now, before we continue, we have a comment in the chat room from our own Alex Anderson. He says, "Hey team, I can't wait to get home and watch the second half of IMSA at Sebring." Hey Alex, that's certainly going to be very exciting to tune into. And speaking of exciting, let us now do a quick and fun lightning round. So Josh, we'll start with you for the first question. Lucas di Grassi starting in 16th, and Sergio Sette Camara is 20th in their home country race. Who do you think finishes ahead?
Well, I thought Sergio Sette Camara might do it, but di Grassi seemed to be on form here all weekend, so I'm sticking with logic and saying that di Grassi will finish ahead.
Well, I think di Grassi's very arrogant and likes to make loads of mistakes under pressure, so I think he'll crash out, and that means Sette Camara will beat him by default.
All right, Ed, back to you. Jehan Deruvala is starting 17th, while his teammate was in the top 8, but has a big grid penalty. Is this a rookie learning curve, or does he need to step it up?
Well, he had a good performance in the second Saudi race, Josh, where there was a red flag in quali where he qualified in the top 10. So I think Jehan is learning as he goes. He's the only rookie on the grid, so he's got an awful lot to learn about Formula E as he goes through it, with energy management particularly. This is going to be a big test for him, starting down in 17th. But I think he can do well here. If he can scrape a point out of this, I think that will be his aim. So I think nothing too big to worry about Jehan at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. It's a big learning curve going from a Formula 2 car to a Formula E car. De Vries sort of knows that as well, and it took him a while to get into the spirit of things. And this is a much more powerful car than a Formula 2 now, with the Generation 3 leap. So I reckon he's on the right course, and definitely very, very impressive. I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if he sneaks into the top 10 if he gets the race right.
All right, Josh. Antonio Felix da Costa is one of 7 drivers to not score points this season. He's starting in 9th. Will he score points this time?
It's looking bad, isn't it? We mentioned it even in Mexico when he didn't score points and Verline won. If da Costa doesn't score points here, I think not only is he in trouble for the rest of the season, but he's in trouble for retaining his seat that early on. He was poor in Diriyah, he was poor in Mexico. He needs to have a good result here, otherwise it might be starting to look like curtains for him.
I feel a bit like da Costa myself right now because there's all this tension music you can hear in the background, and I'm going to come up with an answer quickly. And that's exactly what Antonio Felix da Costa, the situation he finds himself in. Yeah, I think he can score points today. I think as long as it's just a case of staying out of trouble, and potentially that car is good enough to get into victory contention. So I'm optimistic that da Costa can have a good race today.
All right, Ed, both Envision cars start 17th and 18th. Is the top 10 finish in reach or no?
Jaguar powertrain very efficient. Sebastian Buemi, he missed the last race because of a crash in qualifying. Robin Freins had a crash in the very, very first race, but has had a little bit better form recently. So they're probably going to try and work together. It's just a case of, I think one of them will get into the points, but I think the other might have a bit more trouble with just the pack being so tight as it is. So I think Freins might get into the points. So I think Buemi, who almost broke his hand, I think, at this race last year in a crash on the first lap. I think history might have a danger of repeating itself here for poor Seb Buemi.
I'm with you on that. Freins was on it in qualifying, looked straight on it as well. In practice. He lost out in qualifying due to the timings of where they were on the track because they were too condensed together. So they couldn't get a full lap in. So I reckon he'll do better. Buemi, it's up and down with him this year, isn't it? It was good in Mexico, low in Diriyah, now further lower here in Sao Paulo. So I think it's Freins slowly taking that mentality over the hill.
All right, now, Josh, here's the final question of the lightning round. The first 3 races did not produce the chaotic racing that many expected. Will today's race be more of the same or the chaotic Formula E that many anticipate?
Lightning round, Josh.
Depends on whether or not you like Portland. If you liked Portland, this is going to be a great race. Yeah. If you liked Portland, this is going to be a great race. If you didn't, then you're going to be in for a boring one, I'm afraid, because it's going to be a peloton-style race. It'll be very shouty, so hopefully I'll try and make it exciting, and Ed will probably, go like that a lot and go, no, it's not like that. Adam will probably be on my side and saying, yes, it's brilliant. But
hey,
we're going to be for very much
already, are we?
A stop-start race. I just know you too well, my friend. You're going to be moaning at me in the commentary saying, nah, this isn't racing.
Because infamously, I'm a very animated person that constantly makes hand gestures. Yeah, that you've really got me nailed down there.
Right,
but I should answer the question, right? Okay. I think it's probably going to be a bit more interesting, yes. I think we're going to see much more overtaking. And it's going to be a lot of strategic plays for the lead. I don't think Pascal Wehrlein, like I said, is going to run wave up front. I think you're going to see lots of lead changes, but whether they're people just lifting off into turn 1 to let people through or actual lead changes, I think the main battle won't start until maybe the last 10, 15 laps or so.
All right, guys, now that the lightning round is over.
I've got 22
over,
lead
Josh. What are you doing?
changes that I can write down. Might need to turn over the page.
All right, now, so Adam says, Josh, that's right, I'm on your side. All right, now...
I want to be on your side too. Why is there sides all of a sudden?
All right, now...
Is it good? All right. Go on, Isha. Go. We're limited on time. Go.
You guys
I'll
got
fight about this later in the show.
Any other comments before I continue? No? Okay. All right. So let's talk about someone we haven't talked much about so far. The points leader, Nick Cassidy. Only Pascal Wehrlein and Jean-Eric Vergne can leave with the points leads besides him. So he's finished on the podium for every race this year and the season finale of last year. So that's a 4-race streak for him. He's starting in 10th and has Wehrlein's teammate and both Penske cars ahead of him. So Ed and Josh, could we see the teammates and others ahead of him make it a bit more challenging for Cassidy to ensure that he doesn't run away with the championship?
Well, as I said earlier, when we've had Peloton-style racing before, the only 2 winners have been Mitch Evans and Nick Cassidy, both in Jaguar powered cars. Easily one of, if not the most efficient car on the grid, and it's certainly quick enough that even though Cassidy didn't have an amazing qualifying, not making it to the duels in the top 8 on the grid, he could still come through the pack here because he's just so good at this style of racing. We even saw it in Monaco, was it last year, where Cassidy, I think, started 11th or just outside the top 10 and just picked them off one by one. There was a little late safety car that saved him from Mitch Evans on that occasion, if I remember correctly. But yeah, Cassidy's just exceptional at this type of racing. And I think you really just can't rule him out. Mitch Evans something a bit further forward on the grid, of course. I think he's going to be a big threat here too. Probably a bigger threat than Van Dorn or Verne, because I think DS Penske, as much progress as they've made in the offseason, they're still not a patch on the Porsche or the Jaguars, which are the two standout powertrains to have. If something crazy happens, we could see a few interlopers get in the way of Nick Cassidy and derail his championship. So while Cassidy's not he's not invulnerable, he's not invincible. I think he just looks so strong in this Gen 3 as a whole in this sort of style of racing that we have at the moment. And he's always been a really, really good driver, and he just seems to be coming into his own at the moment. So I think it's going to take something very, very special to keep him behind.
Peloton style racing. That's what. They're all going to be out for themselves. And
but he's brilliant at it, Josh.
He is brilliant, and Portland showed he's brilliant at it, and it's going to be very similar. But the problem is Portland was a massive open circuit. The drivers are really concerned that this is a very tight, small street circuit that they're going to have to do it at. So they're expecting crashes, they're expecting red flags. They've worked into the strategy about 4 safety car periods in just 31 laps. So it's insane to think about what can happen. And if we do have red flags, it's also now common that we're going to have standing start restarts. That's another launch down to turn 1 that you've got to think about, more energy being used. It's insane what we could see. So if I was Cassidy, I'd spend the first 5 laps towing the line, go hell for leather straight after. And just if you're out front when you've got enough energy, then we can see him start dominating. But again, the drivers themselves said starting so far back isn't a bad thing. It's actually beneficial. But in terms of other teams holding him up, we saw in qualifying the 2 Penskes, Verne sacrificed his lap. He had a little slide, then just gave up and gave the position to Van Dorn. Van Dorn then needed to get points. He didn't get points, so he's lost out a bit there. But already the teams are starting to play the team games, the strategy games, to just catch up to both the Jaguars in the constructors and the Jaguar in leading the drivers' championship. So it's mad. And then they've also got to start thinking about the manufacturers' championship that starts this weekend, because only the top 2 cars from each manufacturer scores points in that race. So that you've got to start thinking about that, because the manufacturers are going to start thinking, oh, there's a bit more cash for me now. So there's now 3 championships to think of starting here in Sao Paulo. It's going to be insane. And a Peloton race, I mean, it's just asking for chaos. This race is going to be literally written in whatever tire marks are flying through the air, avoiding people, because it's going to be carnage.
All right, now that's all for our Formula E section. Thank you so much, Ed and Josh, for your thoughts. Jackson, I'll hand it over to you for pick a winner for Formula E.
All right, yes, everybody, welcome to our intermission pick a winner to make sure we can get in before Formula E gets going. Of course, everybody, let us know in the chat and comments below who you think is going to win Formula E in Sao Paulo. Ed, we are starting with you.
All right, I'll go for Mitch Evans then, because he starts top 4 on the grid. I think that's a good place to start from. And he's won here before, so it's a safe bet. It's a fairly easy, straightforward bet, and that's who I'm picking.
I'm going to stick with my guns here. I'm going to say that we're going to see Jean-Eric Verne take a race win here. I know I said we've been thinking about the Jaguars, but Verne in that Penske, he's at home this weekend. Van Dorn's getting there with the car, but Verne looks brilliant, so I'm going with Verne.
For my pick, I'm going to go with Pascal Wehrlein.
All right, we've been talking about the Jaguars. I'm going to go with Mitch Evans starting in 4th.
Overall, I'm going to go with a pick I think is a bit of a head scratch for some, but I think we've talked about him. I'm going with Nick Cassidy. I think he's going to come towards the front and get the win, continue his podium streak in Formula E. Ed, Josh, thank you so much for your time. I know you both got to run to cover the race, so we'll definitely let you all go. We'll definitely encourage everyone to check out the links to Formula E Zone. I know they'll be on the air after the race, and Joshua Birch for the watch along for Formula E and NASCAR. Isha, that's where we go to next, the Food City 500.
That's right, Joe. Shifting gears over to NASCAR now. For the first time in a while, the Food City 500 is back. They are no longer stomping on dirt, they are back on concrete. They even brought back the retro walls with the red and white pattern from the Winston Cup era. But will the racing be from pre 2007 or again the new version of Bristol? So, Jackson, for this first question, do you see the High Line getting to the point to become the preferred lane like the last few fall races?
Yeah, that's kind of what we've seen in the last few Bristol races on concrete is the high line kind of becoming the preferred line. But that being said, you're going to need the inside line to be able to make moves. I was kind of this morning I was watching some footage from the last years, and I particularly noticed Denny Hamlin was somebody that was really able to take advantage of that low line. The new Toyota car, the new body, we'll see how that all works out, I guess. But yeah, definitely the high line preferred, but you still need to be able to make moves on the inside.
Yeah, the inside line, especially early on in the race, I think that's where you're going to see the moves trying to take place. That's where we'll see a little bit of the old Bristol where everyone's trying to be on the inside. But unlike in the past, where with the old Bristol, there was nothing on the outside. So everyone was just fighting to the point where they were beating and banging for that bottom groove. You're going to see a lot more give and take. Drivers that, okay, I'm not going to get the inside line. I'm going to probably get freight train, but it's still very early on in the race. The stage breaks, I think that's going to be really key as well, too, when it comes to this race. If we have a caution before the stage break, I think you're going to see where drivers are going to be then taking it a little bit more easy because they know as quick as the stage is going to go with the fast lap times, they're not going to be so aggressive. They're going to be working the outside lane because once that outside lane does get rubber up and the grip is there, then I think you're going to see a lot of the drivers moving to the top, using that outside lane for the momentum towards the end of the race. But as Jackson pointed out, you do need a car that's handling good in the bottom, especially in the first half of the race.
Definitely. Now, if anyone is suddenly interested in buying tickets, according to the Bristol Motor Speedway website, tickets are still available. The cheapest single day ticket is $11.10, and while most sections still have tickets available, it looks like it's going to be a stronger crowd compared to the before the dirt, where there were many empty seats. So, Joe and Jackson, considering the efforts for bringing back Nashville, North Wilkesboro is back with a different schedule and TV agreement. Could Bristol risk dropping to one day?
This is a hard question. I feel ever since 2007, when Bristol got reconfigured with the progressive banking, we saw a different type of Bristol where we had multi-groove racing, side-by-side racing. You didn't need the beating and bang like the past, but that was not the character fans especially loved the Bristol, the beating, the banging, the hot tempers. We know then they changed it to where it's now again all one banking, but we just still see that outside line just work its magic, get to become the preferred groove, and you have the side by side of the low and the high groove. So I think it's a lot of work to get Bristol to pre 2007. Even if you do that, will we guarantee the old crowds, the long waiting list to get a ticket into Bristol? I just don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, we know how consumer behaviors have changed. The sporting market all across the United States has changed a lot. I think it's just very competitive. And Bristol's in a rural area where you don't exactly have hotels all across I-5, interstate access, I-90 over there. So it's a challenge. It's such a big facility, great facility from where it started out as. I just think, if we have a good crowd turnout, hey, that's great. A good product will make it better. Will we get to the point where you're going to have like a long years, multiple year waiting list for a seat? I don't know, but as long as they can rebuild on a momentum, that's a huge win, I feel.
Yeah, Bristol is tough. It's hard to say that you're going to take a date away from Bristol. It's kind of up there in that tier with the Darlingtons, the Daytonas, the Talladegas. It feels untouchable. But when you take a step back and like Joe, like you were saying, it's nearly in the middle of nowhere. And that's certainly not the direction that NASCAR is headed in. And me personally, if I'm looking at the list of races I want to go to, Bristol's not near the top of the list because of the difficulty of getting there, and it's also not the spring race particularly is not near the top of that list. I think the fall race being the first elimination race, that is a great spot. I think the playoff atmosphere is kind of maybe carrying that fall Bristol race a little bit at this point. So I guess, it sounds crazy, but I would not be surprised, maybe not next year, maybe not the year after, but 3 to 5 years down the line, if we do lose a Bristol race in favor of, Nashville, or if the Fontana short track ever comes back. I think that's possible. I think people would be shocked, but also, it would make sense.
It makes sense. And you brought up a good point with the spring race. The weather the last few years, rain, not good. It's cloudy, no forecast for rain, but if that changes, here we go again.
I would say even more than just the last few years. I've as in my memory, there's not a lot of spring Bristol race to remember because I think a lot of that's a Monday race. That's a rain impacted race. Those are always. It's not the same as the fall. I think, yeah, for sure.
All right, now for those who are interested in watching qualifying, that will be happening later this evening, 5:50 p.m. Eastern and 2:50 p.m. Pacific, and we're looking at some super fast laps here. So Chase Elliott has the track record of a 14.568 second lap at 131 miles per hour in 2019. 16 times the pole winner has won this race, and most recent was Brad Keselowski in 2020. Keselowski and his teammate Chris Buescher are coming off of a great weekend at Phoenix. Buescher has won here, and this could be a big weekend for RFK. So Jackson, do you believe RFK is back, as Pete from the Morning Drive would say about Keselowski's storm coming?
Our RFK is here. They have jumped SHR and not just past SHR, they've cleared Stewart-Haas Racing to become the number 2 Ford team behind Penske. I think that's pretty clear. They've settled into that. I think last year maybe we were still trying to finalize that. No, it's decided now. So yes, RFK is back. I don't know if this is Keselowski's weekend. I think it was literally last week's show where I was like, every week we're going to be looking for this Keselowski win. And, I guess it could come this week. I think it would be tough. He was the last spring winner on the concrete, I believe. It was he had top 15 finishes maybe in the last 2 concrete races, 8th last fall and 10th and 13th in 2022. So he doesn't quite have that winning tier performance, but it would not surprise me. Obviously, Chris Buescher has been great on Bristol. Keselowski can match that as well.
Yeah, I think this could be a good opportunity for Brad Keselowski to finally prove the storm's coming and he's in victory lane. I do think his track record here, he has to win. He knows how to get it. If that car is set up well, it's going to be pretty fast, just like everybody else. And then, of course, there's that luck factor too. Even though we still don't see the beat and bang of pre-2007, a crash occurs and you're going so quickly around those corners that are so banked, you could get caught up in it. I think if Brad Keselowski runs a good, clean race, he could find himself up towards the front, fighting for the win. And if he's leading with a handful of laps ago, he's going to make it very hard to get around him. You're going to have to push him out of the way. He's not going to give up the spot because I know he's hungry for a win. Buescher, he has to feel pretty good about this weekend, but Keselowski, he is one driver I'm watching.
All right, now because Bristol lap times are lightning fast, let us do a fun lightning round. So, Joe, we'll start with you for the first one. As of this morning, Denny Hamlin is the favorite at plus 500. With only one top 10 finish this year, do you buy or pass on Denny winning?
Oh, man. I think I'm going to pass just because I feel like Denny Hamlin, especially pit road mistakes, the unique pit road circumstances here under the caution, I just don't see him having a good, clean race. I think Denny Hamlin, I'll pass.
Denny Hamlin, he finished top 10 on the concrete in 2022. He finished top 10 in 2022. He won last year. I think he's definitely somebody to include in your slate. However, with those plus 500 odds, I might be a little cautious and wait for practice times to come out first to see if he's really going to be that far up there.
All right, Jackson, back to you. Joey Logano is 30th in the points, 35 points away from 16th. Can he get in the top 16?
I have to think that Joey Logano will find his way into the top 16. I think maybe he's in those bubble graphics come race 20 to 26 as we reach the end of the regular season. But I mean, that's also assuming he doesn't get a win, in the next 20 weeks, which is definitely possible. I think he should be fine. I think this is very concerning for Team Penske as a whole. I think it also kind of reflects I saw some memes this week about the manufacturer battle between like Chevy and Toyota and Ryan Blaney, kind of representing the only elite Ford car. And I think Logano, he's had the speed in qualifying. We've seen that. So he just needs to translate that to race pace and race performance.
Race pace, race performance, and race luck too. Atlanta, bad luck. Daytona, bad luck. Get rid of these DNF finishes. Phoenix, he could easily climb up to the top 16. If he gets a win, great. But if for some reason, like you said, we're talking about the bubble, I think he'll be well within the top 16 by the time we get towards the last 3 races. But a win will just make it easier in case we have more than 16 different winners.
All right, now Chase Elliott leads active drivers with a top 10 average finish. Joe, can he contend for a win?
I just don't think so. I think he could be in the top 10, but I feel William Byron, Kyle Larson are the 2 Hendrick teammates that are going to be ahead of him. They seem to be clicking really well. I think he's going to have a decent day, but I just don't see him in victory lane.
I think Chase Elliott is a reasonable winner pick. He had top 10s in the 2 next-gen Bristol, I don't even know what it's called, traditional Bristol races in the next-gen era. And I think, he'll be a candidate up there, towards the end. He'll be in the picture at least, I think.
All right, Jackson, back to you. 5 times this race has gone into overtime. The last time was in 2015. So for today, are we thinking over or under on a 6th overtime?
I'm not feeling overtimey today. I think in the fall there were only 2 cautions. 2 cautions for not stage, not rain cause. I think Bristol's pretty unique how the end of the race kind of sneaks up on you. I don't think we'll go to overtime. I think we'll keep it pretty clean.
I think we'll keep it clean. I think this race, with the aero package we have, I think it'll be a fairly tame Bristol race.
All right, now here's the end of the lightning round. The spring race, not counting the dirt races, had more than 10 cautions in 4 out of the 5 years. Joe and Jackson, are we going to see a bunch of cautions again?
If I'm going to predict the 2 stage breaks, I'm going less than 7 or less. So,
yeah, I think that's a pretty good line, Joe. I don't expect. I mean, dare I say, I don't expect too much action from this Bristol race. Like, that feels crazy to say, but I don't know. I guess that's where we're at.
All right, now that's all for the lightning round. Now last weekend's winner, Christopher Bell won this race last year when it was a dirt race. Denny Hamlin won the nighttime race in the fall and famously said, "I beat your favorite driver." Now Toyota looked really good last weekend, and once again, the short track package is in use. So Jackson, starting with you, will everyone be following Toyota in qualifying, and could we see another strong Toyota performance?
I'm kind of, okay. I don't know if they are using the short track package. I think it might be the intermediate package. I think that's what Bob Parkus has been saying all week at least. But that being said, I see Hamlin being up there. I think I see Christopher Bell being up there. I see Ty Gibbs as a Toyota maybe being near the front. But I don't think it's going to be Toyota, as a collective. I think the last few weeks we've kind of been able to do these manufacturer groupings. But I think Bristol here that breaks down a little bit, and it's going to be a little bit more specific. It's going to be more about the driver conditions than what we've seen in the last few weeks. So I think there will be some Toyota drivers near the front, but I don't think we can say that Toyota as a collective is going to be up there.
I agree with you. I don't see Toyota as a group all up towards the front. Eric Jones, Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, easily those 3 will be up there. I'm curious about Ty Gibbs, what he can do now that he has more experience after a pretty decent start this year. Martin Truex Jr. I feel is hit or miss, And then the 2311 drivers, I just feel like I can't predict. It'll either be up towards the front or mid pack or just not hit a ride. It's just really hard. But the three I mentioned of Hamlin, Bell, those two are easily. And then Eric Jones, he's won here before. I think he could do it.
Yeah, definitely. Now, similar to Formula E, we have yet to talk about the points leader, Ryan Blaney. Blaney is sixth among active drivers in lap leaders at Bristol, but is 18th in average race finishes at Bristol. He's only had 2 top 5s and 5 top 10s in 14 starts here. So, Joe, starting with you, is this a race where Blaney and the team enter like any other year, or do they come in trying something different because they haven't had the results yet?
I don't know. That's a really good question because they're off to a great start this year. I mean, really, besides Daytona, they've been up towards the front. Daytona, they were towards the front until the big crash occurred. I think for Ryan Blaney, the team, keep doing what you're doing. Maybe this year with what you have set up for Bristol, it's going to work a little bit better. There's been years he's been towards the front, get caught up in a crash. I think they just got to keep doing what they've been doing so far because they are pretty fast up front all week, all year so far. Just so close to that win in Atlanta and really a different story. But I think they just keep doing. They don't have to come in thinking we need to do some more different stuff because we've not had the success here.
Yeah, Blaney, he just can't seem to get the finishes here, I guess. And yeah, I think it's a totally different. I mean, points leader versus Joey Logano, who's not even in the top 30 in points. Two Team Penske at two opposite ends of the spectrum here. I think Blaney, it's just it's a keep the nose clean, just kind of mind your business, do your thing kind of night. You don't need to go rough anybody up for a win, but also like stand your ground, just don't get taken advantage of and just pull over. So I think, just stay in the top 10, get some stage points, try to be in the top 5 at the end of the race, and that would be a successful day.
All right, now that's all for our NASCAR segment. 3:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, the Food City 500 at Bristol Motor Speedway. Formula E is moments away. We already did our pick of winners for Formula E. So Jackson, let's get our NASCAR picks in.
All right, we are back with our NASCAR pick a winner. I'm pretty proud of my Christopher Bell pick from last week. I was impressed with myself for that one. Isha, let's get it started this week. Food City 500. Who is your pick a winner?
All right, so I'm gonna go with the guy that for one of the questions I think both of you said you asked on. I'm gonna go with Denny Hamlin.
Solid pick. I am going to go another guy we talked about as a possible winner. I am picking Chase Elliott as my Bristol winner.
Wow, Chase Elliott. Well, I'm going to go with the Storm. I think the Storm's coming. I think Brad Keselowski is going to end his winless streak and get a win at Bristol and put himself in the playoffs. It'd be a huge win. So definitely be really excited to see what happens. We encourage everyone participate and pick a winner on social media. It's going to be a lot of fun. The leaderboard is pretty stacked, and so you could get ahead of Kiska, who's only going with Max Verstappen picks. That's a good benchmark of participation. And encourage everyone to participate by investing in the Grid Network. Get some Grid Network stickers mailed out to you if you join our investment list through Patreon. Colin the Show, Mark, Rob, and David Matthew. They've all got some stickers. Your name will be in yellow as well once you sign up. And you can do a one-time investment through Buy Me a Coffee or Super Chat. If you're not watching us live, you see the little thanks button underneath the video. $10 more, you'll get some Grid Network stickers and a thank you letter sent out to you. We're very excited. Hit the bell icon. Subscribe to us. We're going to be at the Thermal Club for the IndyCar $1 Million Challenge All-Star Race. Going to be very excited coverage weekend for all of us here at the Grid Network, and we thank everyone for making it possible. We're less than 30 away from 1,000 subscribers. For Isha Azim and Jackson Todd, I'm Joe Samdiego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races.